September 1914. The world was just 2 months into what would become the Great War, and already, the fate of France hung in the balance. Paris was on the brink of falling into the advancing German Empire, but against all odds, the French and British forces rallied for a desperate stand at the First Battle of the Marne. It was here in the early days of the war that Germany sought to enact the Schlieffen Plan, a lightning-fast invasion designed to crush France within weeks. Sweeping through Belgium and into the heart of northern France, the German forces aimed to encircle Paris and knock France out of the war before turning their attention east to Russia. By early September, Paris was nearly defenseless. The French government, fearing the worst, began preparations to evacuate the city. Meanwhile, the British Expeditionary Force, fighting alongside their French allies, was in full retreat, unable to stem the tide of the German onslaught. But in this moment of desperation, a sliver of hope remained. The French High Command, led by General Joffre, saw a weakness in the German advance, one that could change the course of the war if properly exploited. The cards were dealt. Whose gamble would pay off? On September 5th, the First Battle of the Marne erupted. The French 6th Army, led by General Montgomery, struck first, launching a fierce attack on the exposed right flank of the German First Army. Caught off guard by the scale of the attack, General von Kluck made a fateful decision. Instead of retreating, he ordered his forces to pivot west to face the French, unknowingly widening the gap between his army and General von Bülow's Second Army. As von Kluck moved west to counter the French assault, the gap between the German armies grew wider. This miscalculation created a weak spot in the German line, one that would soon be exploited by the Allies. Seizing the opportunity, General John French, leading the British Expeditionary Force, ordered his troops to advance into the gap. The French Fifth Army, led by General Franchet d'Espèrey, also pressed forward, striking at the weakened center of the German line. The situation for the Germans quickly spiraled out of control. As the British advanced, French reconnaissance planes, among the first ever used in combat, spotted key weaknesses in the German positions. These aerial reports allowed the Allies to coordinate their attacks with deadly precision. Back at German High Command, von Moltke was losing control. Communications were breaking down, and the situation on the ground had become chaotic. The once unstoppable German advance had ground to a halt. By September 9th, after days of relentless fighting, the German armies were in full retreat. Exhausted and overwhelmed, they fell back across the Marne River, leaving the French and British victorious. Paris had been saved. The unthinkable had been achieved. Through sheer determination and cooperation, the French and British had stopped the German juggernaut. The once perilous threat to Paris was now receding. The First Battle of Marne marked a turning point, not just in the war, but in military strategy. For the first time, modern technology like airplanes, automobiles, and rapid communication had played a decisive role in a major conflict. Yet beyond the technology was the human spirit. Determined French and British troops standing together against overwhelming odds that ultimately turned the tide. The strategic blunders of von Kluck, the resilience of the Allied armies, and the vital coordination between forces had saved Paris and reshaped the war. The Battle of Marne wasn't just a victory, it was the beginning of a long and brutal conflict, a new type of battle that would test limits of all soldiers and generals involved.